Welcome to the S.O.A.P Video Bible Study Series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We are in the book of Numbers, and we have made it past the halfway point, week 5 of 8.
Yes.
And we're going to look at 3 chapters today, this week, I guess, 16, 17, and 20.
Yep.
And the reason
we're a little skipping.
Yeah, the reason we're skipping 18 and 19 is because I just don't like those chapters, and so
so we're not going to read them.
They're off limits. Actually, there's some good stuff in chapters 18 and 19, including some people. Sometimes in the news, you hear about the red heifer.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're waiting for a red heifer so that they can fulfill this ritual and make a new temple in Jerusalem. I think chapter 19 talks about the red heifer. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to read it. Obviously, it's just not part of the reading for So
it kind of didn't continue the story forward.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So last week we talked about the spies, and that's probably one of the most story that everybody knows, right?
Just don't know it's in Numbers. We know it's in the Old Testament somewhere. I never would have guessed Numbers.
But the idea was the nation of Israel was close enough to go into the Promised Land that they were like, "Hey, let's send some spies in there and check it out." And oddly enough, I thought God would have had a trouble with, let's send spies and you don't trust me kind of deal. He seemed to be okay with it. It seemed to be, a hard issue and whatever else. But he had a big problem when they came back out and gave a report.
Yeah, we can't do it. Yeah. Well, we're going to die.
And the report was, there's no way we can beat these guys.
Right.
God took a little exception to that, as he should have.
Yeah, right.
Right. So, at the end, the discussion ended with Moses again pleading for the nation of Israel. And this has happened a number of times. I think it happens at least 2 or 3 more times this week.
Yep.
Yeah. And God ends up saying, all right, look, here's the deal. Except for you two, no one else gets to go into the pool.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is that except for Caleb and Joshua, no one else from that generation gets to go into the Promised Land.
Yeah.
And so what we see is, we know that they wandered around the desert for 40 years, but this is why.
Yeah. And
that's the reasoning. So they were waiting for a generation to die out before they could go in.
Right.
And, yeah. Well, then I was also going to say, at the end of last week, there was a reading that included what to do if there's unintended sin and what to do if there's intended sin too. And let's just say there were some pretty harsh punishments there, and I'm fairly glad we're not under the Mosaic law anymore.
So all basically, when it comes down to it, God has given them the law, at Sinai. And he needs them to remember that as they go into the land. Well, now they're not going to go into the land, but they still need to remember it as they're waiting to go into the land, because this entire generation is going to die off, and they're supposed to be teaching this
to the next generation. Like you said, it's brand new for them.
Yeah.
Right. So there's definitely some growing pains. Yeah. And I think we see that again this week too.
Well, and so now we have another rebellion in chapter 16.
Yeah. So they're coming off a huge blow. We can see it. It's right there. Nope, you can't do it. So there seems to be some judgment errors, or some people are taking exception to the people in charge.
Yeah.
I kind of get it. Right?
They look at Moses and Aaron and they say, "You guys you're fools, you're idiots. What have you done?" Right. Basically.
Right.
Why aren't we going in? Now we're all going to die. And so
and there's
a couple of guys that
we say a couple guys, right? So Korah, right, seems to be the main leader,
right?
And he's a Levite, and then there are 2 Reubenites,
right?
And they seem to be the 3 that are in charge, But there's 250 leaders,
yes, 200.
So not minions, but leaders,
right?
That are also
of these other clans that go around that are spread out throughout the nation,
right?
So basically, they're trying a coup.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a coup d'etat. They're going to overthrow Moses and Aaron. They're going to take over, and they're going to be the ones that lead the nation of Israel.
Yeah, they're going to be the ones in charge.
Yep.
Right. And my words adding in, because of your failure for not getting us across the goal line.
Yeah.
Right. You can see the goal line. You're on the 5-yard line, and you ran instead of throwing a pass.
Yep. Yep. You got some red zone problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Moses, of course, tells them to everybody get out your censer pot. Is that the right name?
Yeah.
Censer pot, and clean it up and fill it and bring it here. So I had to stop right there and look up censer pot, what it was for. And I've seen them before, sometimes on TV, Catholic wedding kind of deal. You see somebody coming through.
Burning
There's
the incense.
Yeah, it's really a pot that has some fire in it and incense and holes in it, and it's getting the incense out.
Yeah. Now, in this structure specifically, burning incense was a very particular job for a particular purpose within the
particular place.
Right? Yeah, within the priesthood. Right. Or within the Levites. I shouldn't say the priesthood, because all priests are Levites, but not all Levites are priests. Right. And that's part of Moses' issue here. In fact, he throws this at Korah in chapter 16, verse 10. He's brought you near and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you. I mean, you guys have a very important job in this. He said, do you now seek the priesthood also? Yeah. It's like, do you think this is a ladder that you're climbing? I mean, God has given you your position.
Yeah, right. And now you're striving for more. So God shows up and he talks to all of them, the 250, the 3, Aaron and Moses. And he tells Aaron and Moses, hey, you guys get out of the way so I have a clear shot at these guys.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want to hear God say at all.
No. So what happened was, you said that, fill up your incense pots, your censer pots or whatever. And Moses is like, guys, let's just come have a meeting. Let's just talk about this. They're like, we're not talking with you. We're done. I mean, negotiations are off. Right. Which is really, Moses is still God's spokesman. I mean, he's still the one that God put in charge. So if they say negotiations are off, we're not dealing with you anymore. We think we're going to talk to God directly. God says, you want to talk to me directly? Yeah. You really want to talk to me directly? So they go home, and Moses comes to them one more time, and they come out in front of their tents, and it says they and their wives and their children, their toddlers and everything right there, and they're standing there. What you
exactly?
Want.
I don't know if that's exactly
that's the picture that you get, right?
Well, they're defiant.
Yeah.
Because they are not backing down.
Yep.
He said, this is the way it's going to happen.
Yep.
And you had said before, Moses tells him exactly what's going to happen.
Yep.
Something new, something that God I don't think has done before that we know of.
I love this part.
Go ahead, take it.
This is great. So you've got a standoff, right? Yeah. And God tells Moses and Aaron, stay back away from these guys' tents. Right,
yeah. And in fact, get everybody else away
get everybody
from these guys' tents. So you can see people like scurrying out of the way, right? And other people like, I don't know what to do.
And Moses said, here's the deal, basically. If you guys live out a full natural life, die of old age, then you'll know that God has not sent me.
Yep.
But if God does something new, say, for example, the ground opens up and swallows you, for instance, just, throwing that out. Then you'll know that God has sent me and you were on the wrong side.
Yeah.
And what happens?
So guess what happens, right? The ground opens up. The leaders, their tent, their food,
their families. And everything.
Yep. Yeah, well, it doesn't. I don't know. Does it say it closes back up?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, because I envision that it closes back up.
The earth
and a little burp comes out.
the earth, they all went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed over them.
Okay.
And so they perished from among the community. And all the Israelites who were around them fled, for they said, what if the earth swallows us too? I mean, you can see.
Yeah, right. I'm next to I'm guilty by association. And by the way, fire came out and devoured the 250.
Well, and so now there's the other ones who were following them.
Right. That weren't necessarily right there.
Right.
Fire came out and got them.
Yep.
So no more rebellion.
No more. Yep.
Yeah. So now Aaron told his son to pick up these censer pots, and what God wanted him to do was recycle them.
Yeah.
Basically, they seem to be made out of bronze. They were supposed to hammer them out and put them on the altar.
Yeah.
And I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like on the front.
Nice.
So you've got 250 or what of these things, attach them to the front of the altar.
Yeah. But it's a reminder.
Yeah, every time somebody came to the altar and saw that was not the way it was originally designed.
Right.
You got this bronze work on it now. It's like, you don't mess with the way God has structured things.
Yep. It's a reminder that only descendants of Aaron, right?
Yep.
Can burn incense.
Yep.
Before the Lord.
Yep.
So not burn incense, but burn incense before the Lord.
Yep.
Yeah. So the next day, the nation of Israel still grumbling about what happened.
Yep.
God comes to the tent of meeting. God again tells Moses and Aaron, hey, get out of the way, because he's going to consume everybody now.
Yep.
It's one of those things where God seems to be done again. Moses throws himself on the ground. Hey, you don't want to do this. Seems to be talking God down.
And we talked about that a little bit last week too.
Yeah.
But here's the thing to remember. As I was thinking through this, it seems like God is ready to destroy these people every other day.
You mess up again, I'll take you out.
Right. Yeah. But outside of this, not just scenario, but basically this say this 40 years. Before this, God never threatened to wipe them out. After this, through all the kings and the prophets and everything, God was not continually threatening to wipe them out. He was threatening judgment in different ways, but it wasn't like this.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that this was a unique time where they were just starting out. They were just beginning their understanding the covenant that they had agreed to. Right. And God was sort of like, you put the hammer down hard at the beginning so you can ease up later.
Yeah.
Of course, God's not going to ease up later when,
Right.
But at the beginning, God was saying, you don't understand the gravity of what we're doing here. And so, it seems like Moses is constantly having to talk him down. It seems like God is almost, schizophrenic sometimes. He's just showing them how important this is. He's expecting perfection.
Right.
And his law expects perfection. And it has the sacrifices when perfection didn't happen. Well, I mean, that's foreshadowing Christ, of course. Right. He expects us to be perfect. He created us to be perfect. We're not perfect, and so he dealt with it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But I think that's why, after a couple more times, you're not going to see this constant threat where God's going off on them again. Because now they've been with him for 40 years, and now that sort of thing.
Yeah. So at the end of chapter 16, there's also a plague that Aaron and Moses take care of.
Again. So Moses, like you said, falls down on the ground. God's going to wipe him out. Okay, but 14,000.
Yeah.
Right? 14,700 plus Korah and his buddies, plus the 250. So we got 15,000 people in the span of, a couple of days now.
Right.
So out of that generation.
14,000 died via a plague.
A plague, right.
Yeah.
But they were still rebels. I mean, that's the thing. They were complaining. They were, Miriam and Aaron complained. Miriam complained at least, right?
Right.
She had leprosy for a while. Korah complained and rebelled. He was killed. Now we've got these people in a plague. They've got to figure out that God means business.
I was chuckling because when we get to chapter 20, my heading says the nation of Israel complains again.
Again, that's right. I mean, it's
so,
like
so we're going to see it, but on chapter 17, it's a shorter chapter, but also it seems to contain like one major theme in there.
when it's coming right out of these rebellions, these complaints.
Yeah.
You know, so
Moses,
who is in
Moses
charge?
proved that he was in charge,
Yep.
right? By his speech saying, but if this happens, then you'll know I came from God.
Yep.
And now the same thing happens to Aaron, but in a different way.
Yeah.
So they go to all the tribes. They bring a staff back. Somebody writes their name on the staff, and they put all the staffs in the tent of the meeting.
Yep.
And then come back later, and Aaron's staff has bloomed.
Yeah.
Showing that he
So
was
he was
chosen.
the one from the tribe of Levi, one from each tribe, and basically God says, I'm gonna show you once and for all who I've picked.
Right.
Everybody wants to be in charge. That's fine. Everybody put your name in the hat, but I'm gonna be the one who draws the name out of the hat.
Yep.
And it's really cool. He says the one whose staff. I mean, this is a walking stick. This is a dead piece of wood.
Right.
They've been stomping around the desert with it. How long has he had this thing? Right. These guys. They're ornamented and whatever. Right. And it not only does it grow leaves, but it grows flowers, almond blossoms that actually turned into almonds overnight.
Nice.
Absolutely a miracle.
Yeah.
It has to be a miracle.
Yeah. Now that staff actually gets put into the Ark of the Covenant.
Into the Ark itself. Yeah. Once they see it, I don't think they need to see it every day. So so now that becomes part of the relics of the nation.
Right.
Yeah. So now we have Moses and we have Aaron, and God has said, "We good now?"
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So then we're skipping chapters 18 and 19.
Yep.
Feel free to read. And then we get to chapter 20, and we seem to be close to 40 years in the future, 37 years, or however you want to call it, where they're almost ready to go back in again.
Yeah. So we're skipping the entire
the wandering.
the water, and it's really interesting that Numbers does this, because there is almost no information at all. Chapter 33, I think, sort of gives a summary of the entire wandering time. But even from a written record, the whole time is just a waste.
Yeah, and just a waiting.
It's wasted lives, it's wasted time, it's wasted energy. The entire thing is a waste.
Right.
And it would have been a waste of ink to even write about it.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even write.
The story
about it.
didn't move forward.
Yeah.
Right? It was just at a standstill. So now they're back where they were with the spies on the Last Judgment. They're back there again, and there's no water.
Yeah.
And nation of Israel is complaining. And God tells Moses and Aaron to talk to the rock, and water will come from it. Instead, Moses speaks harshly to the nation of Israel, and he hits the rock a couple times with his staff, and water comes out abundantly. Now, when I first read this, it's only 3-4 verses. I mean, it really doesn't take long. And then you get to verse 12, and it says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to show me as holy before the Israelites. Therefore, you will not bring this community into the land I've given them." So I had to go back 2 or 3 times and say, what did I miss? What did I miss? I mean, because at first I read it, God told Moses what to do. Moses did what God told him to do, just like he'd done every time in the past. And I had to read it again and go, ooh, there's some differences here. There's some big differences here. It's also it seems to be one of the first times that Moses is really talking harshly to the Israelites.
He yelled at them.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he's put up with a lot now.
Right. God doesn't seem to be in his talk at all either, which is big and different. And then God told him to talk to the rocks, and instead he hits the rocks. So he's intentionally doing something different.
Right. So God says, "Speak to it, water will come out." This will actually have been the second time that this happened, because God has provided water from a rock previous, not in Numbers, but previous to this. And so God says, "Speak to the rock, and water will come out." And what Moses does instead is he turns to the people and he says, must we provide water for you? Not must the Lord provide water for you, but must we provide water for you? Yeah. And he just takes his staff and he just beats on this thing in my mind, right?
Yeah,
Envisioning. And he hits it twice. And God graciously still
provides
water. Right. But then takes Moses aside and said, listen, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where Moses doesn't get to go in the
He doesn't get to go in.
Right.
Now, some people think that's really, really harsh. I mean, after all that he's put up with, after everything that he's done, every time God wanted to destroy Israel, he was watching out for God's name and reputation and everything. And one time,
one act,
he hits a rock instead of talks to it. Is that worth? Yeah, because the higher you up, the more responsibility, or the more authority you have, the more responsibility you have. And Moses, in his anger, was basically saying, I'm doing this for you. And he was supposed to, be out of the way, pointing Israel to God.
Right. So there is some redemption later on, right? Doesn't Moses come back for the transfiguration?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it's not like he's out of everything.
Right. Right. Yeah. So Moses is there in the transfiguration. He'll be there in the kingdom. It's not like he's kept out forever and ever, but he's not going to lead the people in. And in fact, God, just before Moses died, he had Moses climb up a mountain, and actually he showed him the land. He actually gave him a tour, and I don't know if it was a supernatural tour where I got to see everything, or if he just looked over the river. But he actually got a little tour of the land, and God said, "I'm going to show you. You can see it, but you can't go in yet."
Okay.
So there's still grace there.
Yeah. Yeah. Two other points we need to talk about. First, the nation of Israel wants to pass through Edom.
Yep.
And so they ask, and Moses, I'm sure it wasn't Moses, but a representative, and they asked very nicely, "Hey, can we come through? We'll stay on the roads. We won't, pick things. We just want to get through." Yep. And the answer was no.
Nope.
Yep. And I think they asked again, and the answer was nope.
And Edom is the family of Esau.
Right.
And Israel is the family of Jacob. So these are cousins.
Right.
And Edom has always been at odds here. So just by way of, just so people can see, if you look at a map of Israel, Edom is on the south east side of the Dead Sea. Okay, so they're coming up around the south side of the Dead Sea, and instead of coming in south in Israel, they're going to come around the south side of the Dead Sea and come up, go across the Jordan here. So this is modern day Jordan that they're going to they want to go through.
Try to skirt through.
Yeah. Moab will be in there too here in a couple of chapters. But yeah, they're like, we will stay on the highway. We will pay for everything. We will not disturb one blade of grass.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that God brings this back up, like way later, right? When Israel, and there's the split kingdom in there, basically saying, Edom, don't think I didn't forget.
Yeah.
This event.
Yep. So we see this event shows up in of course, Kings and Chronicles and some of that stuff.
Yep.
But one prophet.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Well, because one prophet was specifically tasked with prophesying against Edom because of how they treated Israel. And the prophet is? Obadiah. Shortest book of the Old Testament.
I think we did that. We did a bunch of short books, right?
Yeah.
We did a series on...
a couple at the church, a couple of years ago.
I forgot what we called it. Why is it there?
Why is it there? Yeah. Yep. And it's his whole prophecy is against Edom, and this is one of these things several hundred years earlier.
Right. So last big event that happens, Aaron dies.
Yeah.
Before he dies, the priest is given to his son, the same son that was dealing with the censer pots.
Yeah.
They're a little earlier.
We should note that in verse 1. So this is a bookended chapter because in verse 1 Miriam dies. And at the end of the chapter...
Oh, that's right. I don't think I said that.
Yeah, Aaron dies. Yeah. So of the three, the two brothers and sister, Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. Moses is the only one left.
Right. Well, and the nation's not going in until Moses dies. We don't know how many other people also need to die too.
Right. Yeah, because that entire right.
Yeah.
Well, and how many have died in the two chapters that we skipped?
Yeah, right.
We will see in a few chapters. There's another census taken, and we'll have an idea of
How much they've grown or not grown.
Yeah.
They've been.
Yep, what's going on there? Yeah.
All right.
So as we wrap up this section, just a reminder that God's not schizophrenic. Okay, He's not just Greek mythology. Some of the Greek and Roman guys. You're always waiting for Zeus to zap you or something like that. That's not Jehovah. That's not the true and living God. He was really trying to show them just what it means to be holy. What it means to live up to His standard.
Right.
And the wages
loving
of
and just.
Yeah.
kind of
So much grace in here, and yet so much judgment as well. Right. And just a reminder from a New Testament perspective, probably the verse that sums up all of these chapters that we've been seeing for the past couple of weeks now is the wages of sin is death. Right? The wages of sin is death. But, and here's what they didn't have yet. The gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Right.
They were still 1,400 years away, looking forward to somebody who could finally come and free them and save them, deliver them from all this. We're looking back on this, but God hasn't changed. His standard is still the same. His morals are still the same. And so no, He's not running around zapping entire nations or whatever. He's given us a lot of grace through Christ. But ultimately, there's still only two options. We either accept Him, we believe Him, or we reject Him. And in the end, those two options, those two choices, determine the two destinies.
Right.
So
right, good.
That's one of the reasons that we study the Old Testament, because it still gives us the insight into God.
Yep.
So
yeah, good.
Yeah, hopefully you find that helpful, encouraging, even, and not so much that He wanted to kill all the people, but that it is the wages of sin is death, and that's not the encouraging part. The encouraging part is that God's gift through our faith in Jesus, and it's one of the things that it's important that we emphasize, and so feel free to share this with your friends and family. And we will be back next time as we continue going through yet another famous story found in the book of Numbers next week.
Good deal. Can't wait.
Yep. See you then.
We'll see you then.